What you got?
All right, welcome to the School of Bitcoin. Jacques is with us today, which is awesome. Back again. Got a bit to get through. I know, Karen, you said you got to run early this morning, so that's cool. No problems
about that.
No worries. So yeah, we've got. Just wanted to kick off with the Bitcoin meetup. Are we good to go for tomorrow night, Gordon?
100%. Yep, all good to go.
Awesome. So are you guys going to run it from the space?
Yeah, we need to just do a test run on that, I think, just to make sure I've got everything going right. I've just first day on Starlink. This is my first hookup to Starlink. I have heard that's a bit dodgy around gaming time, 7 o'clock.
Oh, okay, right.
So will we take the risk? We'll take the risk on Starlink, or?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So it must be bandwidth issues around that time. But what are you getting? You're getting like 200 down, yeah?
Yeah, 200 down and about 30 or 40 up.
Should be okay, I reckon.
Yeah, should be fine.
Like the Starlink that you're connecting to?
Yep.
Oh,
the Starlink. Cool. It's a lot more expensive than what our traditional would be here, but our traditional drops out a lot. We only have a wireless broadband. So it's actually, I mean, I'd use my own country's service if we could, but it's just not suitable. And we're waiting for cable to be run up our street. Cable's still way better. I was talking to our tech guy. He said cable's still way better.
Oh yeah. If you can get fiber into the building, you can't beat the speed of light.
Awesome.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, so Tiggs, so tomorrow night, we've got Tiggs pretty much lined up. So I thought just between you and Tiggs, like a bit of a Q&A. I mean, I can sort of host it if you like, or you can, as in just have some questions. I learned a lot from Karen's chat with Electra last week about, like some different, just about how to get people to speak up and, talk about their ideas. So Karen, you mentioned some really cool things there last week. I did document them as to how to get what was the ideas.
A few sort of structures, like what makes you say that, or what do you think you know about, or
yeah, that's it. What do you think you know about it, and what puzzles you, and what would you like to explore? So
yeah, cool.
I've found them very helpful, and just getting people to express what they're thinking without feeling it's too confrontational, sort of, or they're showing what they don't know. It's much more accessible way to encourage people to participate actively.
Yeah. So are we thinking mostly on Lightning and setting up nodes and that sort of thing? Yeah, sure. Cool. All right, that'll be fun. That'll be really fun.
Yeah. So you guys, so it'd just be whatever you need to, like, I don't understand all that tech. I haven't set it up. So we're the learners here. Are we setting up a Bitcoin node first to be able to run a Lightning node? I guess that's one question. Or can you just run a Lightning node without a Bitcoin node?
Yeah.
I think there was just, we can bring a bit of an element of stacks into it, in that, there is an opportunity to run a stacks node as well. So
cool.
But that would be another conversation.
Yeah, that would be good, actually. I wouldn't mind figuring that out. And that and the mining aspect, I'm still hazy on the mining for stacks.
I've got I've taken the total deep dive in my course. You're talking to Jacques before about the course that we're doing. And ultimately it comes back to the course that we're doing. You are actually having to do a deep dive into the technology. So cool. If you had the knowledge of Bitcoin before you started the course I'm doing, you would be way better off. It should be a prerequisite. To my course.
Yeah.
So it's a good point. I heard that conversation. You guys were talking about prerequisites and things for courses. Yeah. Definitely a very good, because it's blockchain. It's the basis of blockchain technology, preventing the double spend. Yeah. So I think there's a good angle. I'd be happy to chat to you about that with your course.
Definitely. I mean, well, that was kind of my thinking. So for the courses that you write, you need prereqs addressed. So like, is there English as second language? Have you got math skills, like up to a certain level? Have you got written skills, oral? And then there's the tech, but the tech's like an add-on. It's like digital literacy is just like a recent sort of thing they've added on. So I was thinking encompassing all that. So rather than doing different tests for things, here's the Bitcoin white paper. Can you explain it back to me? And then you're all right. It kind of ticks everything, right?
Yeah. So on the stacks mining, Zan from Damon Technologies, he's the guy. I think it'd be great to host an event, a future event where we could get Zan on. I think we should all do a bit of learning first about stacks mining, because he runs a company which basically runs mining operations. And
yeah, for sure. I think that would be really, really useful. Like we did a podcast with Brett from Gamma. I don't know if you checked that one out on Bitcoin Aggregated with Chris, and he had
awesome.
Chris he was good. He played devil's advocate a lot with stacks, which is healthy, I think. So it probed a lot of questions in my mind as well. And the mining thing, I'm still hazy on. So even after doing research, I'm like, well, how does it actually mine? So how's it producing the BTC from the rewards? Like I understand it's proof of transfer, and then you have X amount of stacks in a pool, and that generates yield. But the initial,
no, it's easy. It's very easy. So all it is you spend Bitcoin to have a chance of being the miner, and that Bitcoin you spend goes to the stackers. That's how it is.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not
so
really
the mechanism behind that. No, it's not mining Bitcoin.
Yeah. It's the wrong terminology, probably.
Yeah, that is on my list of things for us to explore. It's all those questions around, stacks and Bitcoin. So it's coming. Yeah, I'm running into it at a couple of places. So it's good for us to learn.
It's awesome to learn. So it's interesting. It'd be good feedback for them as well, because I think that that's a point of contention for a lot of people, probably BTC maxis in particular. They're like, mining, what are you talking about? Like, that's not mining. So if they change the language on that, potentially that might alleviate some of that. But anyway,
some of the things I've learned out of that, the stacks community is absolutely stacked with absolute Bitcoin maxi type people, Bitcoiners. They are serious Bitcoiners. Manib is a serious Bitcoiner.
I know. Yeah.
A bunch of different people I've heard having conversations. They're serious Bitcoiners and very passionate about Bitcoin. They see stacks as having basically one of the things that would assist the Bitcoin network is creating more transactions on the network. So that's good for the network. But yeah, there is definitely some answers to be some questions about, is it, they promote it as being built on Bitcoin. So that'll be a good conversation to have in a I think a good Q&A with some people.
For sure. But anyway, so going back to the meetup, so focused on Lightning and nodes specifically. So we'll leave stacks out of it for then. Okay, cool.
Yeah. You and Tiggs just pretty much. I'll help you direct it.
I'll ping him and make sure he's not in VR then, and we'll do that. I might do some slides or something for that. So I wanted to go through some of the stuff I've been working on for the course that I'm doing. And like I was saying just before we jumped on, I've started, instead of using Google Classroom, because I found I was sort of double handling things, like putting them into Classroom, then putting them into GitHub.
Yes.
Now, coming back to Jacques and your sort of view of the days initially was just using GitHub for everything and sort of organizing stuff in there. Then people get the learning around GitHub and using it specifically. I know, like, people jumping into it for the first time, it's a bit scary, like, because it doesn't look like your average sort of interface. But I think it's like that's where all the world's code sits essentially. So it makes sense to sort of learn it early on in the piece. I think, like, we were using it at Urana for the kids developing their own websites and hosting them there, and then learning just about, how do I upload stuff to GitHub, and how do you do like fork a repo and then change it and then make it yours and that sort of thing. Pretty basic stuff, but using it as an LMS specifically, I think it's pretty cool. So, and I'll share my screen.
Kieran, yeah, I think I was sort of learning that in navigating all around stacks. It's pretty much, I have to be totally agreeing. It's like,
yeah.
I'll share another thing after this.
So I might. So anyway, this is yeah. Well, you can share your screen, and Jacques, I'd love to see what you've been working on as well. But basically, I've started doing this course. So basically, you go through your you basically have to pick out a unit of competency and an assessment requirements sheet for that, and you annotate it and you sort of put it into your own words as to how you're going to deliver the course. So I've kind of gone through that, uploaded it all, so you can have a squiz through that. But basically, what I'm taking is develop and maintain blockchain solutions, but making it for the BTC protocol specifically. So like industry focused and having, I'm thinking of like for the fake people that are running through the course is like 6 different industries, each with a need for the BTC blockchain. Like one being an artist, one being forget what I put, a bunch of different industries anyway that could use the BTC protocol in different ways. So I'm thinking sort of Lightning, stacks, and then maybe even looking at different side chains, and even the base chain. So is the base chain like, part of what you want to use for your industry sort of thing? So anyway, going through all that, going through the where am I? The assessment requirements as well. I'm pretty sure it's taken a while, but I'm pretty sure I can take this and make it all BTC centric for the most part. So then I was going through all this. I'm like, well, I'm kind of writing all this stuff into GitHub. Why don't we just get them to fork what I've got and then fill out as they're sort of going along? So where am I? So I started filling that out in here. So what I'm thinking is, as the users run through this, and there's a whole other sheet that I have to fill out as well. Actually, I'll bring that up. Where are we? This project 2. But I'm thinking of putting all of this into GitHub. So basically, you have to go through and you kind of write up what you're working on and why you sort of want to develop that. So my thing is basically the Blockchain Center Melbourne, which is a real place, real industry body, wants to implement a course for learners to implement the Bitcoin blockchain into their business or industry. So that's my prereq, like the BTC white paper. Purpose of learning is this is all stuff directly from the unit of assessment that's already there. So then if we go down to, where are we? So yeah, it's part of this Diploma of Information Technology. So it's the one unit in there that specifically talks about blockchain. So I wanted to pull that out and sort of write that up. So then, and then I've picked out core units and electives that would marry up to that. So basically, I think for each of these, you need to, well, I'm going to anyway, bring them back to the BTC protocol and how they sort of interplay with each other. And where am I? So I was thinking for the comprehension. So basically, in here, you'd usually have like a bunch of stuff. So like, for instance, doing my TAE for the course, you had to sit like a long, boring tests like to get through to say, yes, here's the tick, you can actually, do this course. And I'm like, well, can't we make that more exciting? And like you said, Gordon, have this as the prereq, and you're going through and actually writing up a summary of this, why it's important and why it's important to your industry. So then I was doing all this into Google Classroom, thinking, oh yeah, we can use that. And I'm thinking like because you have to use Moodle with Chisholm. I'm thinking, well, one link to Google Classroom, and then you're not using that LMS anymore, you're using Google Classroom. And then I was like, well, from there's all these links out to GitHub. So why not just do it all directly into there? So that's why I started doing it in here. So I'm thinking whoever starts filling out these, and we have like there's a whole bunch of units that we have to do. So basically, from here, so establish blockchain objectives, purpose, and requirements according to organizational needs. So I'd start that with an open discussion about the BTC blockchain. Then the first activity is to fork the repo that we have, and then start answering the questions in there. Same for the second part. So identify organizational processes and transactional types of suitable for blockchain technology. Obviously, this would be specific to the BTC blockchain, so it kind of cuts out a fair bit of stuff that you'd be sort of researching, and moves that over into layer 2 and stacks and side chains and things of that nature to actually talk to the BTC protocol. Then identify organizational use cases according to organizational needs. So again, open discussion around that. And the legislation in Australia, which I think is pretty open at the moment in terms of blockchain stuff. Although Gordon, you might know better than me. Is there any like legal ramifications for implementing blockchain tech at the moment? I couldn't find anything.
No, I don't think so at all.
Not that
None.
you've come across? No.
No, zero.
So I think that'd be, yeah, it's a pretty brief summary you'd be doing in that then.
Yeah, there would be, yeah, the only questions might have been around tokens like stacks. I mean, Bitcoin's definitely, from what I've seen, is like it's acceptable across all levels.
Yeah,
I've not seen any government having any issue with Bitcoin.
No, well, exactly right. I think more so blockchain and data, that might be where it comes in. But I mean, if we're using the BTC protocol, then it's kind of irrelevant, right? So I think maybe if applicable, maybe like for an artist doing artwork, NFTs or something, there might be some sort of copyright or copy left stuff that you need to look into, I suppose. But anyway, that was
If you just drop me that question, and I can have a look into that.
Yeah, cool. That'd be good.
That'd be good, because we've got the LawFi DAO and a bunch of other resources there, and I've got my lecturer at university at TAFE that we can find out if there's any legislation in regards to that for you.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be really handy. Yeah, so then sort of moving on of jumping into design blockchain solution components. So gather data according to organizational needs. So I was thinking to kick that off, you'd want to actually get hands-on, build your node, and then have your Lightning set up, and if you needed to, like something like Albi, I was thinking for, or Blue Wallet even potentially. But then in that setup process, setting up Hero and stacks as well. So then sort of going through after that hands-on back into your GitHub repo and answering some of the questions that are in there. And again, doing that for a workflow. So I was thinking Miro, but there's probably other stuff that we could use for that as well. But anyway, it kind of goes on. So it's pretty dense, but as I was filling this out and writing it up in Google Classroom, I thought, well, this is silly. Let's just do it in here. So that's what I've started doing. And I obviously haven't gotten too far. I'm just still first stages, but bringing it out from there into GitHub and then getting people to fork it. So I don't know. I thought before I continue with that, I'd throw it out and see what you guys think. Is that kind of a good idea, do you reckon, to keep going into GitHub with that?
I think that looks great. And like, it just makes a lot of sense. So was the idea, if it wasn't in GitHub, would people be copying it and putting their responses in line?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, if it's within GitHub, having them go through and cloning it and putting it in line with that, just like the way that you have it in mind, makes a lot of sense. What's the file format for that where you have it being typed out right now?
So that was the README file. So I've just changed that and started banging it into that. I do have an index as well, but I thought once you start editing anything else that isn't the it's the .md or whatever it is.
Yeah, like Mark.
Yeah, it's once it's anything else, it's like another hurdle. You know what I mean? So you have to like upload that file and I thought, well, if it's just in the markdown and in the README file, they can just clone that and start writing directly into it. Like it's not as elegant, I suppose, but I think it's a lot easier. Like there's one less step for them to do. But I don't know. Have you got another solution that I could be using?
No, I do the same. I mean, and like so I created documentation within GitHub for like the little mini course that I created.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I just used like the markdown formatting, and it works good. And you could add images to it and everything. So we could really.
Oh, can you? I didn't even realize that. Oh,
yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah. I found a good resource that that walked through, because I wasn't really sure how to use it. It walked through like all the different formatting. So like header 1, 2, 3, all the way to 6, I think, and then uploading images. You can add tables to it. So I think we can honestly make the markdown look exactly like that other, like the Google Doc.
Oh, you can. Okay. Oh, yeah. Wow. Oh, I'd love to get a hold of that resource if you.
Up right here.
That'll be awesome.
So can I make a comment just about GitHub? As a non-GitHubber myself, I find it a little bit daunting, you know, how to. So while the content's there, it's then how do I go and access it as a student? And so that would be one of the questions. Doesn't need to be answered now, but that would be, if there was a course there, how would I get in there and follow it easy?
Yep. And I think that's the key. No, you're right, Gordon. And it's really important, but that's kind of what I was going back and forth with in my mind. Like, you want to make it easy for people to get on board, but at the same time, utilizing GitHub is really important as well. And like, I think if we do that at an early stage, it does more justice to the learner, I think. Do you know what I mean? So like having that skill to begin with. So I think that's maybe where we start with. So like for this ICT 527 course, like you have to do an intro for that. So I was thinking, well, the intro would be like, for me running it would be use GitHub, sign up to GitHub. This is how you use it. So like they do that anyway. So like when you go to like any course, so you go to Swinburne, go to uni, like they use Canva, I think it is, or Canvas. Basically, they run you through that to begin with. So it's the intro. This is how you use this LMS. So why don't we just skip all that and use GitHub as the LMS, like, and create the learning at the very start how to use it? Because it does look daunting, but to be honest, like if you compare this to Moodle, it's way easier. Like infinitely easier. Like Moodle is a horrible piece of software. It is open source, but like all the implementations I've seen of it are just clunky and like hard to find things. Like once you get your head around GitHub, it's pretty straightforward. So I reckon
I agree. That's great. It's also that I think that if you're entering into this space, it's all an open source space. And where's it all being developed? It's in GitHub.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, if the course that you're developing is actually for somebody that is learning about not just sending peer-to-peer payments, you're talking about a whole technology course there, which if they go down that, you know, if that's an introduction as a prerequisite for like the course, say I'm doing, it would be most beneficial. So it is, you are actually learning to build. So I think that's a great way to start because you need to be familiar with GitHub.
100%. Oh, and the other cool thing, I'll share my screen again. Hang on one second. So with this repo through Leak, too many tabs. You can actually mirror it to IPFS. So that hash there on IPFS is the actual repo of BTC, so of the course that I'm doing on GitHub. So
nice.
We can actually take that and pin that between the three of us, and then it keeps that repo alive. So I mean, there's so many cool things that you can do with GitHub, that I mean, we were already doing that obviously with Google Classroom, and I still want to pursue that with the Rocket Shoes angle for the learners. But I think like with GitHub, we can kind of do that a bit more freely and easily, and there's tools to do that are already sort of built out. So if you want to check that out, it's a fleek.co or ipfs.fleek.co, and yeah, they've got a whole suite of tools so you can host all sorts of stuff. You can mirror your apps or whatever you're building straight to IPFS. Now I found I had to build an index for whatever reason. It didn't recognize it until I had an index. So I just made an index pointing back to the back to the repo, and then it picked it up. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So I reckon it's yeah, it's kind of win-win really. But it would be interesting to get a perspective from, say, somebody like Karen to run her through how GitHub works, if we could actually do that sort of from the ground up. So once I've built this out, so this will be done in the next I'd say 3 weeks or so. I should be done, and hopefully I pass this part of the project if it's if it kind of ticks all the boxes, which I think it should. So maybe after that we can get all of us to sort of run through it. So we don't have to do it all like 100% correct, but even if we can just upskill all of us to actually run through it and put stuff into our own language, but actually utilizing GitHub to do that.
I'm super keen.
I reckon it'll be cool.
I'm super keen to hear what Jacques has got to say, because we haven't seen him for a while.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm talking too much.
but if I could just I found this week that when we were going through with the Stacks chapter development there last week, and they were talking just about the grants and the way the grants are all set up in GitHub.
Yes.
And I thought that as a bit of a learning journey, the getting set up for our grants program for the learners in GitHub modeled off, maybe we can fork the Stacks one or have a look at it and build our grant. So you basically think about it, you've got the donors and you've got the grant applications and then the conversation in between.
Yep.
And so really the Stacks Gov grant launchpad has start putting your ideas up about what you want to apply for a grant for, and then people can come in and chat to you about it and see where you're at, and then eventually it goes up for a vote. At the moment it's a centralized vote, but eventually it'll be a DAO vote. And so yeah, I thought it was a good path for us also to build out in GitHub.
Clone that. Yeah, why not do it exactly the same, but for the
and
learners,
that will solve. So that's sort of a bit of a in the pipeline on how to manage. It's even the Digital Playhouse grants, as we get grants come in, how they're going to be distributed and getting people to, it becomes interactive. So they put up their ideas, and the people giving the grants also can go in and have a chat and go, oh, I've got a question about this, the people that are giving the donors. So you think just, you think about someone that's donating to the Digital Playhouse. And then you've got the person that's going, hey, I want to build a project, or I want to apply for something like something that I'm building. You can get that. They're not even tech people. They can get in and have a conversation and they can learn a skill.
100%. And exactly. For the School of Bitcoin days, like for the learners applying. Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Let's do that for sure. And yeah, speaking of the grants as well. So like, we had a meeting last week with Will. So Will from Stacks, who I think we all met with at one stage. He did a really good presentation. They've got a whole new system now for the grant applications, which is probably that link that you.
Yeah, I just dropped the link there for you guys now.
Yeah, so I kind of ran through some of the stuff that we've been building out and how we kind of came to the point of running a community, but we have all these cool ideas that we want to build out. So like Jill's program, the School of Bitcoin, the days, like all that sort of stuff. And there's potential for us to get funding for all of it if we do it properly. So I reckon we should look at
Jacques, that could be because you're actually working on that tech end side and the NFT and the login. That would be very much, if it's going to provide benefit to the community, I think the grants have to be open source, like what you're developing has to be something that's open source. So that's an important thing from what I gathered. And yeah, so but yeah, any one of our projects I think could be in there, and if they see it as being something that's going to benefit the community, then you may get a grant.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, potentially even like what I'm building out with this accredited course. If I can get that accredited, that means like, and if I can get clarity in there somehow, there is actually so there's coding aspects as well. So I've got a meeting this afternoon actually with Chisholm, doing some consulting around like the Cert 3 in ICT. I was looking through the unit of competencies and the assessment requirements for a lot of the early stuff, and there's no mention of vendors. So like, you go through when you go through an IT course, there's a lot of like, Microsoft cert this and Cisco that, and they kind of have control over everything, and you kind of have to adhere to what they're doing. But the early days, there's none of that. So I'm thinking maybe that's where we sneak in some clarity, or like, like early days stuff, and make it as fun as possible. Even IPFS, I think, why not? Like, why wouldn't you utilize these tools? Anyway, I'll find out this Arvo if that's allowed, but it could be something interesting. Anyway, yeah. So Jacques, did you want to share your screen? I'll give you permission. And
Sure.
yeah, run us through the days, like, because I was pretty blown away by what you've your second screen, sorry.
Yeah,
I
computer
thought we
here.
set this to like auto admit everyone. Anyway, never mind.
All right, so I'll share my screen. Okay. So there we go. Yeah, so what I really have been trying to work on here is setting up my own GitHub profile. Like once you get into GitHub, you have your own like landing page in a sense. So I wanted to create mine so it would be kind of like my own, like a LinkedIn for myself, where it just houses everything that I work on. So this really just shows like this table of contents, shows like the process that I've been working out. This is really consistent with what we worked through before and all those different sessions for how we were organizing the days. But I think I'm just trying to work on it a little bit more systematically, so it makes a little bit more sense. So really it's broken out into these different headings here. So it starts off with onboarding, and then it allows someone to create a community plan or community project, and then distilling that into a project brief or like an abstract so they can quickly explain what they're working on. Helps them create a design system around their project or idea. So this is like the branding with the colors, typography, style guide, and then creating a content strategy. So this is really meant to be focused around ecosystem marketing and how you present your individual like vocation or your individual craft or your community's efforts. How are you going to be going about it on social media and on Substack and all these different platforms? The portfolio is about how you're going to be presenting your value proposition. So your website, the application, like the NFT wallet that we're talking about, that's really where this can come in. Gamification is about the actual blockchain protocol that you use, the tokenomics behind everything you're trying to put forth, along with just like the NFT gamification that comes into play. Reporting is related to how you document your meetings, the research you do to back up the work that you're doing, and then also case studies to just kind of like verify the learning that you've done, kind of get into writing. Brand story is related to kind of like world building. So how do you, I mean, if you can kind of think of like the metaverse, and how are you going to be rendering different stories that make people a little bit more excited about where you're working on. And then finally, the metadata. This is kind of where things come into play with GitHub. So what's the actual technology used? What are the governance protocols? And what's the licensing mechanism that you're using with whatever you're trying to work on? So you can think of this right here, this entire table of contents, as like an API. So, an API is like an application programming interface, but I'm kind of trying to put a spin on it so that there's two different ways that you can go about this. With this is a profile that I'm making for myself. So it's my programming interface. And then the exact same structure would work for a community or like the School of Bitcoin. So that would be like our programming interface. So it's my programming interface and our programming interface. And then to dive into the actual repository, this is where kind of the specifics come into play. And this is just like the file structure that goes along with the table of contents that I just showed. And then to dive into like the actual course that I've been working on, so like I break that down into, if you dive into like the onboarding, it's kind of like the coursework. I have a very rough outline of the overall curriculum. So it starts off with someone just creating the core curriculum, and then slowly with every course that builds on it, it continues to build on top of that initial course. But for this first one, something called it's just a name I came up with, is the Soul Cycle course. That's the soil of life. And this is just to create the nucleus of the hobby that a person wants to turn into their vocation. And I didn't really know what a vocation was until recently. I wasn't really privy to it, but I watched something that had a clear distinction on like having a hobby, which is just something you enjoy doing for yourself. A job is something that we all need so that we can make money. A career is something that you enjoy doing on an ongoing basis and you'll pour a lot of time and energy into, and you also get paid for. And then a vocation is kind of like a person's calling. So this is something that you would do whether or not you have money. It's more meaningful to you than a hobby. And it's something that you can be paid for, but if the money goes away, the vocation is still going to be in place. And even me with this, like I love developer relations. I love the concept of community building. I'm not being paid for this right now, but it's something that I just want to figure out. I want to be doing this no matter what.
Yeah.
So I help other people. Like, I think it would be really cool to help learners come to this, be like, what do you want your vocation to be? Like what tools do you want to learn to build up what you're most passionate about? So within here, so this is a markdown file, and this shows like how you can upload photos to it. In this markdown file, I kind of like have the course details listed out with just like a course description, just saying like when you work through this, you'll be able to define the hobby that you want to turn into a vocation, like define the industry that is related to this hobby and vocation. And so working through this, the idea with this is just to have a very core concept of what you're going to do. Because again, with this course, the next course is creating an ecosystem around this core. So it's kind of building on all the topics that you dial into here. And one thing that, so you're able to work through the course within here. So it works through each of the steps, pretty simple actions that just have you define what you want to do. You come up with a slogan that kind of will down the road become like the branding for it. But outside of GitHub, I also wanted to create resources that might be easier for people to grab onto. So I also created a Fig Jam file that makes this course a little bit more visual. So within Figma, it's kind of like Miro, but you can create there's like community files that you can put out. So this is a file that anyone in the community, it looks like 13 people have cloned it, and they might be working through it in their own way. But if I were to get a copy of this, actually I can just go to my Figma here and save a step. So within here, this is an exact copy of what you saw within GitHub. So like that README file is also right here. So it takes you through the course description, has you starting here, and then
So, sorry, Jacques, is that synced to GitHub, or you're manually doing that from? Yeah. Okay.
Man, both. Yeah, yeah. So, and this was just because when I did it in GitHub originally, like I knew some people wouldn't really resonate with it, so I wanted to just that would work in both ways. So
Yep.
so here it's just like, this is an example, like, okay, define the name of your vocation. So just like you come up with a few different names, you can brainstorm them here. And then once you come up with something that you want to solidify, you can just put it into this central sphere in right here. And again, there's no need to walk through all this. The overall idea is that once you work through each of these, you'll have a very high level outline of how you can start building out your vocation.
Your vocation, nice, yeah.
And so once a person goes through this, the idea is, how do you make this even more tangible to them? So another file that I added to the Figma community is an NFT template. So as someone works through that, they can then come in here, and so they have like their vocation name, the industry, they come up with like a slogan for themselves, and they can easily just come in here and change the images that go along with this.
Oh,
and then
cool. It's really cool.
This can then just be like an NFT that they can mint on Stacks maybe, and it's something they can maybe mint for free, but it would show, I went through this course, I uploaded my own photos that kind of comes like my own vision board of exactly the vocation that I'm building out. And then there's something tangible that they can then upload to their wallet that would show that they went through the course in their own way.
That's awesome.
But then just go ahead.
Sorry, what do you reckon the ETA would be for somebody as a novice sort of running through this to getting their vocation? Like, how long do you reckon it would take them?
I mean, they could run through this in a matter of probably like 30 minutes, to be honest.
Yeah.
Run through each of these questions. Are pretty straightforward. And it's really just like, what do you like working on? What industry do you think it relates to? What slogan do you want to use to always remind yourself like why you're working on this? And then it's about asking a probing question that always makes you think about your industry in ways that how do you want to improve it in a specific way? So if you're thinking about education, like a question might be, what benefit can come from decentralized education? You know, like a question that just keeps me thinking back to it. And so it's really high level. And then like the next course that comes into play will be building on top of all these initial questions. So let's say a person finishes this and they have different questions that different responses for each of these. The next course in this process will be going a lot more in depth, and then it'll allow them to kind of build a high level business plan associated with it. And then at the end of that business plan, it'll be something similar to this, where they'll be able to solidify their questions, solidify their responses into a more complex format, but then they could again turn that into an NFT that would just signify that they completed that round of course. So
yeah, I love that. That's so cool. I'm just thinking, because I've got a student that's really keen to jump into something that we're working on, and I think it's still kind of early days for the course we're developing. She's turning 14, I think. Do you reckon this? Because I'm thinking early days, like you find your vocation early, like before you have a job or anything, right? Do you reckon this would it be too advanced? Do you reckon, or?
I don't think so. I mean, like honestly, like my goal here is to get this. I want to get this course so simple that like a 6-year-old can do it.
Yeah.
Like I want people to be able to do this at their earliest age, so that they can be building on their vocation throughout all of their education.
Yes.
And creating this system for people that are our age, we're going to want to like design our industries around this same principle, right? So and it just makes sense. Like if you're a young child and you're working along this process, the problem is we go to elementary school and then we get to college. And then once you get to the working world, the mechanisms are all completely different.
Yeah.
So if a person can design their own education around their vocation, and then they also have, I mean, because everything here is very individual centric, but the concept is this exact same process can be applied to the days.
Yep.
So the same way that a person's creating their vocation, we could say, how do you want to create your community? So
yes,
if a person knows how to design their own vocation, they'll also know how to create their own open source community. So
yes.
We do this for ourselves. We could do this for the School of Bitcoin. And then the same way that I would be building on, the next step would be me building out my my personal plan for myself. The next step for a community would be, okay, what's your community plan? Maybe it's building out the Bitcoin node, like a Bitcoin mining node or a Lightning node like that. So that's the idea here. So like, again, this is like the my PI, my programming interface, but then the RPI, like the collective interface, would follow the exact same process in parallel.
Cool. So do you reckon, I'm just thinking, should we, I love the way you think, it's awesome. Do you think we could do, so I'm thinking obviously a student running through this would be really cool to begin with. But do you think we should organize a date for the days and get all of us together and run through this as the vocational aspect of the overarching days, and have that as a sort of main I don't want to say goal, because what's the saying, build systems not goals, but I suppose it is kind of a goal as well, like at the end of the day. Do you reckon that's worthwhile doing as a group? Is it at that stage where we could actually run through it as a team?
Yeah, absolutely. And so like, I'll even show you here. So to test things out, like I have another group that I'm working with, and where is it in here? Let me see. Yeah, here we go. And so we've got there are 5 of us that are working on this, and this kind of shows like where it's going to go. So we started off where each of us created we went through the little 7-question course, and we all have different answers here based on what we wanted to do. But then it gets loaded up in like a larger matrix. So then all of us that are working on, everyone that's working on the School of Bitcoin, we all have something unique that we're bringing to the table.
Yeah.
So we all just like hone in on what we want to do with the School of Bitcoin, or we could also just each hone in on what we individually want to bring to the School of Bitcoin. And as we do that, and each of us starts building out our ideas around that, that can kind of organically start to create a narrative for the School of Bitcoin.
So
yeah.
My other question with that is what's the go-to? Is it the visual tool, or is it GitHub? So like where's the data sitting for that, and where, like what's our objective with that? Because I'm the same as you. I keep going back and forth in my head with that. Like I want everything to be consistent and on GitHub, but then you have to start thinking about how other people can interact with stuff as well. So it's difficult.
Yeah. So I think so like the Fig Jam file, it's similar to Miro, where multiple people can at the same time. And so I think it's good for kind of like brainstorming. And then the way that I'm thinking, it's like once we can kind of like brainstorm, maybe we have one place where like we're creating these are the responses just for the days. Mm-hmm. And once we have something finalized, then I would say that would be a time to load our responses into like the metadata. So then there might be a person, like if I'm managing the GitHub for the days, I might just like go and look into like the Fig Jam file where we are all just like throwing ideas around, not trying to finalize everything. But then once we have things cleaned up, then we just pull over the final responses, and then we can look at the metadata. And it's also great because we can save the Fig Jam file, which we might be able to just keep public, and we can save that, or maybe like a screenshot of it, so you can see like the proof of work in a sense behind it, along with like the finalized metadata that we put into GitHub.
Yes.
And so with that, it would be like the metadata that I say would be like, that would be like more like a JSON file that would have like the responses for like community name, industry, like slogan, all of that for just this first course. And then the second course would be like the next branch of the metadata, and we would just keep building out in like a systematic way like that. And like the concept would be, once we go through this first course, that'll essentially be like the onboarding here. The second course will help us populate like the community plan. So once we go through 10 courses, a person will slowly build out all the different aspects of the GitHub for themselves. So it seemed like just the fact that I've been working through this with different people, like they like doing it with a visual tool that they can kind of like, it's kind of lower stress to be able to just like throw responses around together.
For sure.
And then GitHub is kind of like where we lock things in. But
yeah, the
I do feel,
feel
if someone's going through it by themselves, they could easily just clone GitHub and change the responses like you're saying, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
so I might do that on my own when I get some time, just so we have it. But I'll clone it. And actually, you're admin for the Bitcoin repo as well, aren't you? Or Bitcoin one, yeah. Clone it into that, and then we can work through that as well. I'll shoot through an email and see. We'll find a date where we can get as many people in as possible to contribute, instead of it just being like a few of us. I think if we can get I think we've got 25 people as part of the faculty, so it'd be cool if we could get the majority of them in. And I think I'll ask Peter Hutton as well. He'll have some. He's really good at thinking outside the box, so he'll have some good responses. Karen will be really good, I think. Hopefully we can get Jill in as well. I heard Jill's she was pretty sick, and I think she's been pretty busy as well. So hopefully we can get her involved again as well. But I'll find a date, and then let's go through it, because I think it's fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm curious. Would you want people to go through this individually, or would you want us to kind of create this for the days specifically?
For the days, I think. So we're all working on it collaboratively. I think that'd be awesome.
Cool.
And then, like you said, then we can spin off and do it on our own as well.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
The central point is like the decentral point is like the days. And then kind of building out from that. I think that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's like a raison d'etre, right? So it's like the reason for being. Like at my old school at Marana, we had like a paper that we'd always come back to, like the raison d'etre that was written for the school, and this is the purpose, this is the reason for being for the school, and this is why we're all I always say goal, but you need to sort of move away from that. But the overarching ideas that you want to use for your community, for your whatever it is, I think that's really important, and I think you've crystallized it really well here. The visual is great as well. Definitely a cool tool to use.
Thanks. Yeah, and it really is. It's very high level with this first one, but again, like the second course that I'm working on now really gets into like the community plan, and it'll even like it'll make it even more clear to us about what we're trying to work on, and then once, so it's like it's going from like the atomic scale, like the very nucleus of what we're doing, to then like the overall is like the community plan. And then the third course will be like the project brief, which will be, again, making that really easy for us to just like communicate it within like a paragraph or like a elevator pitch. So I feel like those are like the first three courses that I'll be going through. So
I reckon it's awesome. And then we'll mint an NFT like as a group. That'll be sweet.
Yeah.
I love that idea as well. I think this could work really well for the different stacks communities that are out there as well. It might be worth you jumping into one of the meetings at some point. We've got one tonight. I don't know what time it's probably better timing for you in Chicago, because they've like worked it around everyone else except Australia, the lonely island that we are on the other side of the world. But yeah, maybe not tonight, but I'll ping Adam and see if I can get you into one of the meetings, because I reckon this would be really worthwhile doing. Either that, or we do a whole other meeting with the Stacks community teams that we can get together, because they're pretty cool people. And like you said, Gordon, mostly true Bitcoiners as well. They can just see the potential for Stacks to sort of build on top of that. So yeah, really, really cool people indeed. That's great. Well, let's do that. So I'll ping Adam and see if we can, if you're cool with that, if you want to do that, I reckon they'll benefit a lot from that, because I think like the different communities, like we're probably more advanced like along the way with our community building than a lot of the other groups. So they're kind of still kind of feeling their way out and coming up with their vocation, really, like why are we doing this sort of thing. So I think that would be really beneficial to them. We do have, it was really interesting yesterday, had did a podcast with Bitcoin Aggregated with an educator from El Salvador. So he's in 2 schools. Really nice guy, John. He's from the States. He's gone down there to develop a course to teach financial literacy specifically, and it was really fascinating. So he's had like all the same discussions and ideas, maybe not so much around the days like aspect of stuff and kind of going deep into that, but the financial literacy course. So like you're saying for the initial course, like they don't even talk about Bitcoin to begin with. They talk about what is value, what is money, get into that, and then they start going into the infrastructure, the different wallets, and the fascinating thing is, they said it's like 99% Lightning, like they don't use anything else, and they're kind of like, wow, that's incredible. He's like, yeah, I do like 100 to 200 Lightning transactions a day. I'm like, what? That's insane. Yeah, that's cool. So cool. But they've got it all written up. They've got this course. It's all in Spanish, but he said they are looking at translating it to different languages. So I was thinking we could potentially collaborate. And he's down for keeping everything open source as well. So yeah, it was a real win. The fascinating thing with the 2 schools that he's got was it really mimicked like what we've been through in Victoria with the devices. So it was a whole thing here. I don't know if you remember, Gordon, but they had like in the papers and everything about banning phones from schools. So banning mobile phones or smartphones, smart devices. And we, like our school, use them every day, right? So like, because the price of a MacBook or even an iPad, you can get like 10 to 100 Android devices like cheaply, right? And they're learning tools. So we were like, oh, it's such an elitist way of looking at technology, like as a distraction tool, not a learning device. But it's really fascinating to see that's been replicated, like that dynamic in El Salvador. So the two main schools he's at, that they've actually written a diploma, so they're going through a diploma, but a diploma works differently over there. So basically it's from age 16 to 18 that you sit it, which is probably better, really. It's like the younger the better, really. But basically one of the schools is like free for all, bring whatever device you want, and the other school has banned all mobile devices. So I was like, oh, well, what have you noticed? Like, it's such a cool study case to have like those 2 schools to see what the difference in learning is. So he's going to get back to me with that. So he's writing the curriculum, and he's got Spanish teachers actually teaching it. So I'm super keen to see like what the differences are, because I noticed it like 100% the difference, like going into different schools that had banned devices where the kids are disconnected for the most part to our students that were connected and using them and knew how to use them as learning tools, not as distraction devices or gaming tools or whatever. But not to say gaming's bad, like there was still positive gaming and construction and Minecraft and all that sort of thing, but how to use it as a learning tool specifically. So it's fascinating. So yeah, we had a long chat with him. I could have spoken to him for hours, really, just to pick his brain about El Salvador and the education system and how everything works over there. But Yeah, pretty fascinating. So potentially I'm going over there in November. So we'll see how that all pans out.
I saw that the podcast came up there. I'm looking forward to listening to that.
Yeah.
Karen, it is a question that I've got about my homeschoolers and after schools that we've got coming here. The question about, students having an email. It's like they got to, if there's one parent to access some of our programs, they can't have 3 kids with the one email address. So I'm going, look, just get an email address. Like kids, it's, right from early, they've got one at school with the EDU, but we're saying Gmail or Proton Mail. Well, Proton Mail first is what we've been saying. And then it comes down to devices. I want to get things happening with them, with Satoshi, with Lightning wallets, but no one's got any devices.
Yeah.
So I've got to start to address that now and go, look, some prerequisites of getting involved here is like, let's not be fearful of them. And it was a question that I wanted to have with Karen about, how can you ensure that devices and the applications don't become problems? Because quite often the families will look at it and go, look, that's just going to become a problem for me, versus an essential tool to
learn. Yeah.
To learn. So I'm dealing with that right now.
Yeah.
And what to do about it, because I want to get them on board, but I go, well, I want to get you some sats going and you haven't got a phone. So how do I?
The thing that I kept reiterating, and we had a lot of parents saying the same sort of stuff. So we actually recommended for their smartphones to not have a SIM. So as soon as they're connected to your network, you're in control of it. So you can, block any of the bad stuff, but also it's not, you're not calling people, because they, like, a lot of parents still have in their head that it's a ringing device. Like they're still thinking back to, a phone. So they think they're calling people and texting people or whatever. If you keep reiterating, no, this is a computer and it's connecting to our network specifically. So it's not the students. I mean, they can have their own network as well, but I kept recommending for them not to do that. And then I had to keep explaining that all the devices, we had banks of Android phones, but I kept explaining, this is just like a tablet, like an iPad, but a mini iPad. It's not a phone. So it's the phone aspect that I think triggers them. They get kind of anxious about it.
That's excellent. And so what was the, did you say there's like cheap Nokias or something that will do the job, or is that the one you would recommend?
Yeah, there's
while we're on it.
and Android Nokia, you can pick them up from the supermarket for about $70, I think. And they're pretty good. Like, I mean, they're on stock Android. We actually even got some of the Android Go devices, like when they launched as well. So Android Go, and I think they were like $40 or $50. Like, they were cheap as. Android Go just runs like a really stripped down version of all the Android apps from Google. So I mean, if they're really pressed for finances and they want to find some cheap learning tool, that's the way to go, I reckon. So Android Go, or just a cheap Nokia. Like, I think Nokia's are still the cheapest, like in terms of stock Android. You don't want to go, like in my experience, like the Samsungs. The cheapest Samsungs are really, because they write their own kernel and they write their own software based on Android. Found a lot of them really slow and clunky to use, so I'd probably steer clear of them. You want as close to base Android as you can get. So I think the Nokias are still to go for that. But there's probably others. I'll do some research and shoot some through to you.
Yeah, just that'd be great. And I've got a contact too in the space for education suppliers to education for technology.
Oh, cool.
So if we need any resources, he's keen to do a project on for gaming. What do you call that? Esports gaming.
Yeah, nice.
Really cool guy from Queensland Computers. I think it's called Queensland Computers. So yeah, if we need any, as we go down the track here, I'm going to set up a meet with him to see if we can, you know, get educational prices on all any hardware we want. So looking into getting the Raspberry Pis from him.
Oh, wicked. Yeah, that'd be really good. Yeah, if you can, if he does have any Raspberry Pis, the big thing that we're missing from El Salvador was hardware, specifically Pi. So that like no one's running nodes or anything over there from the sounds of it. So it'd be good if we could donate some over to those guys, like over to even to like 1 or 2 to their schools.
Yeah,
To
sure.
the schools that are doing the program, I reckon that'd be really cool. But it's so hard getting hardware nowadays. It's crazy. Like you look on even eBay, like the price of Raspberry Pis have just gone through the roof, which is bananas. Like I saw them for $300. Like what? It's meant to be a $30 device. Like what happened to that? It's crazy stuff. Anyways, this was fantastic, guys. I know we've probably gone way over time, but thanks heaps, Jacques, for jumping in and running us through everything. I'll ping everybody and let's make a date to run through the day's vocation. I think that's going to be really cool, and I'll make time to do it on my own as well. So that'll be great. Really, really cool.
Awesome. I just posted in there as well for Stacks, another good resource is the community events. You can sync it into your calendars or just set up a calendar for it yourself to get some reminders and choose some different events.
Oh, cool.
So I put the I do submit the Bitcoin Australia meetups in there. They didn't accept the latest one because it was just pretty much lightning. But I did put in there it's for nodes as well, but they accepted my last one but didn't accept this one. So that goes into the global network. It'd be good too to Kieran, just I'll get some people online to test out all our links, make sure everyone can get in. And I sponsored the guys Mark Moss and Alex that wrote this new book called The Uncommunist Manifesto. So I've got a dozen or so copies. So if anyone in our group wants a copy,
yeah, I'd love to read one. That sounds funny. Yeah,
cool. I'll send everyone an email and post you one.
Yeah, awesome. Please.
Anyway, it's a cool book. Gets people thinking about, you know, what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
And from a couple of our top Bitcoiners. So
yeah, very cool. Yeah, God, Alex
they were talking about that.
Wait, we got a nice little comment in there too. Little comment about our community and
awesome.
You know that we're because we sponsored it, you know. So
very cool. Oh, that's very cool. Well done, Gordon. That's great. Cool as guys. All right, well yeah, catch up next week, and well, I'll see you tonight, Gordon, probably if you're jumping into the meetup. Otherwise tomorrow.
Yeah, awesome.
All right. See you guys.
Talk to you then. Bye.